Chakravarti lecture in wellness, promoting a healthy work environment and resolving conflict and disruptive behavior. Happy to see Anita in the crowd today. Anita's a colleague of mine in the Department of Anesthesia, and her and her family have set up this lectureship 3 years ago with the idea that they were going to educate, inform, empower, and transform the way that healthcare is practiced in the 21st century. Among the goals that they had when establishing this lecture were to promote awareness of the challenges in maintaining a balance in personal wellness and a career in medicine, to acknowledge how physician wellness can impact patient safety and quality of care, and to create a platform for local and international or national physician health experts to speak on the topic of wellness and resilience for healthcare and human service providers. We're fortunate today to have Dr. Mansfield Mela, who is a professor in the Department of Psychiatry here at the U of S. His specialty is forensic psychiatry, and he's the founder of the forensic subspecialty in Canada. As an expert, he's been called to testify upon the various aspects of the interface of law and psychiatry, including criminal and civil matters. He's an associate faculty member in the College of Law and teaches medical law and undergraduate and postgraduate students. Dr. Mela is a member of the Saskatchewan Review Board and also a member of the Saskatchewan Physician Health Program. Dr. Mela.
Good morning. You know how technology is. I can't find the clicker and now I'm panicking. I'm having a panic attack. But I'm sure it will come. Good morning.
Morning.
I found it. That's what anxiety does to you, right? When you're ready and you suddenly become anxious. I'm happy that you're all here, and I look around the crowd. I do see a number of people that I know. I know that in an alumni meeting like this, there are several years that are covered, but I think some topics unite us together. So we are all interested in the healthcare, and so the importance of promoting a healthcare that is healthy, a healthcare workforce and environment that is healthy is really central to the things that we do. Before I continue with the topic, promoting a healthy work environment, looking at physicians, disruptive behavior, and conflict resolution, I have to go through the disclosures. I have no financial or relational events that have any commercial value to this presentation. I've not received any funding or in-kind support to prepare for this, and therefore don't have anything to mitigate a bias that doesn't exist. I am a member of the Physician Health Program, as was mentioned, where we help physicians that are having some challenges, and so I'm very invested in the principles that Dr. Chakravarti has mentioned, wellness as well as resilience. I have other additional disclosures. I have over 55,000 unread emails. Such inaction, I'm sure, causes you to look at me irresponsibly, so you're very free to arrange a crucial conversation with me at the end of this. I really shouldn't have a Facebook account because none of those posts will be read. And interestingly, I actually initially thought I was going to be speaking to only physicians, and there are those people who I work with in the bank who are sitting in this audience who know that I don't reply emails. So this is a real inaction. The roadmap this morning is really to focus on these two areas, but to try and give it a more positive twist. We know that conflict is normal, but not resolving it is not. And disruptive physicians' behavior is something that has come onto the field a little bit late, but it's something that also creates the environment to be toxic. So to bring the two together and suggest that all of us in this room can intervene, we can do something about it, which is what is really more of the important theme this morning. Before I start, however, I want to just say a word about Dr. Chakravarti. I really want to say that my involvement with her has been mainly around the Physician Health Program. I've found her a great mentor, very passionate about the topic. She's one that aspires in what she focuses to achieve and tries to get it. She knows when to select her battles, and you will see her giving up some battles to win the war. She is someone that I will speak to when I'm sat around the table looking at physicians and their families, that really believes that if we can focus a lot on the wellness and the resilience that helps all of us, there is an effect that spirals down to other people. I can tell you from my own experience that she's not just a physician, she is a person. And I think you know what that means. There is a difference between telling people to do something and doing it yourself. So this is not an individual that you will see talking the talk. She actually walks the walk. I don't have to give details, but I really want to appreciate being invited to talk on this third Dr. Anita Chakravarti wellness lecture, wellness and resilience lecture. As I move to the topic, the goal this morning in the next 50 minutes or so is really to try and see how do we make the healthcare environment to be psychologically healthy. We know that there are certain things that particularly could disrupt the work environment, but there are many things, almost like a raging fire, but there are other things that we can do individually, collectively, that can actually promote the environment to be less toxic and to be conducive for wellness and for promoting health. So I'm going to be focusing on those factors. I'll start with conflict. As I indicated, conflict is a normal way of life. There is no way you can put two individuals together without generating conflict. But it shouldn't be blown out of proportion. And in fact, there are many things that we can learn about it. So I pose these questions to you. Have you or do you know a perfectionist who sets unattainable and unexpected goals for others, not just for themselves? And secondly, have you or do you know a colleague who has overreacted or harshly criticized somebody, probably a colleague in open, purely because the person has made a lapse in conduct or performance in their clinical duties? This is where these two themes come together, because those expressed behaviors, as common as they are, and as accepted in the community as we clinicians usually accept, are things that can generate into a conflict. And if unresolved, they actually create the basis of the foundation of disruptive behavior because of the stress that it causes on the recipient, but also because of the unresolved and tension that occurs in the interpersonal space in the work environment. So it's crucial that we understand when conflict actually starts. It starts really from the basis of perception. So we need to understand in the work environment what causes that conflict. It is the perception that occurs differently between the two parties that are involved in the conflict. So I see the other individual as beginning to frustrate my concerns, taking my concerns as less important as his or hers, and that creates the conflict. And many of the needs that the persons involved will have, or their interests and the goals of life that they set, they seem threatened by this other party, and therefore generates the conflict that we're talking about. As well, I want to stress that conflicts are actually important sources of improvement. We can learn a lot from each other. We can learn a lot from the persons that you're having a conflict with, and that will create an improvement in our relationship if we approach it constructively. Conflict has been described as the gunpowder of friction, and although I'll be using a couple of funny images, I don't want to make light of it. It's just to make a point. So we know that conflicts exist, But then what do we do to resolve conflicts? And the sources, as we mentioned, in the workplace. There's been a lot of studies. Bell has really come up with a number of particular factors that contribute to those conflicts in the work environment. It could be differences in style, differences in goals, differences in perception, as I mentioned earlier, some cultural differences in individuals, some things to do with just uncertainty and the pressures that occur in the place of work. And those in themselves can create those conflicts. So if you think about perception, think about an example where a co-worker is brought newly into the environment. Some individuals may see it as a welcome help that is highly needed, while others may see it as a subtle message that they are not performing. And that could originally begin that conflict in the work environment. Then we work in the health regions or health section where there's not a lot of resources. So when we juggle to try and get the resources, especially in our advocacy roles, to make sure that patients are taken care of, it is not difficult to see how those scarce resources can lead to conflict. As well, there are goals that we have in the place of work that sometimes can seem conflicting even though we're trying to work in the same environment. So just like the proverbial 8 men touching an elephant and describing the different parts and never really turning out to be the elephant being described, sometimes in the work region our goals may seem different. So think about the relationship between the quality of work and the quantity of work. Why some people enjoy measuring how high volumes turn out, some rely on the quality of the work. So those sometimes can seem disparate and opposite. Then if an individual considers him or herself as selfless and sees or perceives others as selfish, it's not difficult again to see how conflict can occur in the same work environment. I use this example to just put a point about the pressures that we face, which is really in real time. Consider a resident who is preparing for exams in 2 months and deciding that they would like to take some vacation to study, and suddenly gets a call from his attending that the attending is going to be away and he needs to cover the unit on his behalf. And then this resident suddenly realizes he can't really put his 100% in the work, but realizes also that his mother has just received a terminal diagnosis. And not only that, they just introduced the whole department to EMR, which is not malfunctioning. I don't get any giggles as much in this audience as compared to the Americans. When you talk about the electronic medical records among the Americans, is a source of significant stress. So this is real life, and in that regards, you can see how the individual himself would be quite under a lot of pressure, and not surprisingly, in relating in that interpersonal space, the conflict can arise. All of these and other reasons cause conflicts to occur in the workplace, but to maintain a healthy environment means we need to focus more on solving the conflicts rather than ignoring it. So what are the options that we have in trying to resolve conflict? There are some that are appropriate and welcome. There's some that are inappropriate and unwelcome. So I'll start with the unwelcome ones so that hopefully you don't actually utilize those kind of methods. This is in the context of several flavors. I bring ice cream in the morning to kind of send away your appetite, but hopefully to send away these coming types of conflict resolutions. For example, the use of a baseball bat, which is usually called a mood stabilizer to resolve conflict. That wouldn't be advisable. Nor would calling a conflict resolution helpline where the person on the other side says, I'm just the janitor here, but if you said that to me, I would punch his lights out. That's not what we are hoping as a way to resolve conflict. Or to have a face-off like these two insects through the glass where they actually want to break through the glass. We don't want those type of conflict. Or the mothering way, where the mother says, okay, I'm going to count to 3, and then this committee is going to have to make a decision. Got it? We don't want that type of resolution of conflict. Or to go to the Trump Tower and possess a weapon that will be used to resolve a conflict. We don't want this. So we prefer to use appropriate methods, and that's what I'm going to be focusing on to help us to create an environment that is healthy and conducive for learning. One caution, we cannot use the inappropriate methods of avoiding conflict resolution or aggression to resolve conflict or even ignoring it. Those will not work. We cannot deny it. It occurs, and we need to step up and actually attend to the conflict that exists in the workplace. The communication and collaboration are the two major candidate roles that are tasked in resolving conflict and maintaining the work environment. We advocate, we have to be medical expert, we have to be professional, but these two are the cornerstone for resolving conflict. We think about collaboration. It is based on the respect that you have for an individual, and so that forms a foundation of trust that you can work together. So it's important to enhance those as our steps of resolving conflict. Communication, however, is a very interesting theme because there's much to do with communication that guides us in trying to know our boundaries, in clarifying our roles in the place of work, because when those are done preventatively, it avoids conflict. But also, when we communicate, we need to understand the value of attending and listening, the value of using the right words, and so recognizing that there is also usually a message that is communicated through the medium of communication. And what is initiated by an individual needs to be couched in a way that the recipient receives it as it was intended. It is interesting that sometimes we have messages that we want to convey, but in conveying those, we actually produce a reaction that wasn't intended by the message. So it's important to be self-aware of those communication tools that help us to reduce the conflict and actually maintain the workplace to be healthy. There are a few things I want to suggest as each one of us that can do as we try to resolve conflict. There's a method where we speak to ourselves when an event has occurred. It almost feels like fueling the fire. You put a little fire, and as you add wood to it, it starts to grow into a bigger size fire. So that's something that we do very well internally. So you get an event that has happened between you and a colleague, and it turns out into imagining things about the colleague and about yourself. Sometimes the message is such that the individual involved seems to be the villain and is seen in a very negative way, while you see yourself as a victim, and because of that, they have to bring a resolution in trying to resolve that. Victim stance is usually to actually, antagonize the individual, and a conflict can result from that. There is no alternative to sitting down and talking through a conflict. But before you do that, I advise that it is crucial that you consider the following as offered by Pastor and author Rick Warren before you actually do that. And those are: you're never persuasive when you are abrasive. Your point won't come across if you are being cross. If you say it offensively, it will be taken defensively. Never use truth as a club. Wrap it around in love. And also choose helpful words to convey your dissatisfaction and disagreement rather than harmful words. As I mentioned, sitting down one-on-one is probably the best method, but sometimes you may need an extra third party to assist if the conflict hasn't been resolved. The approach is really to arrange a time that is convenient between you and the person that is having the conflict, whatever it is, a colleague, a co-worker, a relative, a parent. And it's important to also conceptualize what their backgrounds are in coming to this level. Without knowing that circumstance that they are involved with, an example of the resident I gave, without knowing the diagnosis of the mother, without knowing the pressures of having with EMR, it's really difficult to talk with a good understanding. So those things are important when we try to resolve conflict, and having a third party if it hasn't resolved is important. We also have to be realistic that there are certain work situations where resolution to those conflicts may not be immediate and may take time, and sometimes probably never. But that doesn't mean you cannot work together. You're still in the same environment. You still have to maintain a healthy environment. So I offer, in conjunction to what the literature suggests, some of the things that we need to do, which include focusing more on reconciliation than resolving the conflict, knowing that you have to work together and maintain some level of peace, and the themes of disagreeing without being disagreeable, and also having unity in the place of work without uniformity come to mind. And recognizing that there may be times where you need to work on yourself to forgive the person, because without that you're going to be actually having more and more conflict over time. So those are the things that I advance. And also, if it fails, remember some of the big conflicts that have happened in the world that never thought they could be resolved, and they ended up being resolved. And of course, if you want to inspire hope, think about the 1914 Christmas truce, where the warring parties put down their weapons and actually came to play a game of soccer on Christmas Day as an evidence that whatever conflict is going on temporarily can eventually be resolved. I was going to show you a video of CMP as a switch gears into disruptive physician behavior. The video, unfortunately, will not play in this regards, which increased my anxiety this morning, but I think I will maybe do some meditation on my way here to try and resolve it. Essentially, what I was trying to do was to help you contrast, or get you to contrast, these reasonable expectations of a physician's behavior with the physician that was going to be seen in the video. So the video essentially has a nurse taking over, and if you don't know, we can give you the website. Is given by CMPA, and it's available on YouTube. So if you just Google YouTube and Google CMPA Disruptive Physician, you'll actually see it. Essentially, these are some of the things that many colleges of physicians and surgeons expect of physicians to do. Their ability to communicate, to receive feedback, to be open to constructive criticisms, and to teach, and to measure up to a certain standard is expected. But had I shown you the video, you would have seen that it will not display that, because this nurse just takes over from a colleague at the end of their shift, and she's told that there's a patient who is sick and she's supposed to look after him. She's told that there's a resident on call, but she's also told that there's an attending who is on call, is on the phone. She's warned not to call him because he's not very nice on the phone. And she goes about her day, and there is obviously crisis as usual in the unit, and feels the pressure to call. She hesitates for a moment. The health of the individual is deteriorating. The resident is tied up. The only person she can call is the attending. She builds up courage. The nurses and some of our colleges have really focused on, in terms of professionalism, is the concept of civility in the place of work. And it's based on the respect that you have for your colleagues and the respect that you have for those that you're working with, including patients and their families. And essentially, if that behavior is not in place, it creates a psychological disruption in the individuals that you're dealing with, and it ends up creating an environment that really people don't feel comfortable to express themselves freely. So any instability can lead to some of that, and it begins to fuel into what a disruptive behavior actually is. I believe some people may think these are children who are showing instability, but the definition that I like to give for disruptive behavior in the workplace, especially physician disruptive behavior, is that it doesn't have to be something that occurs in action. It could be an inaction that is taken, and it could be words rather than an action. And it occurs in an interpersonal space and creates a disruption in the individual who is the recipient, and causes the environment to be potentially adverse, so that the health of the patient and the quality of healthcare we deliver is actually impaired. There's usually a context behind what is described as disruptive. There's also what exactly is done. And more importantly, there is a consequence to the individual who is receiving it, and to those who are observing, and to the work environment. And you see that from some of the examples. So many of us are very familiar with the scalpel throwing surgeons or the macho boy, the non-physician, but unfortunately, those days are probably gone in terms of what we liked it to be and where things are going. I have to admit that when initially I got to understand what disruptive physician behavior was, I began to feel as if people were picking on physicians alone. That why is it only physicians? We have other people in the healthcare who are also disruptive. Why are they not focusing on them? But fortunate to say, and I'll show you some research on this, that this is now spread across almost all the professions. Nurses have done tons of work in the area, pharmacists have been working in the area, other hospital workers are also doing. But just in terms of statistics, recognize that between 2 to 5% of physicians are described as disruptive, and there's a lot of healthcare issues that come into play with that. I'll cover that. In a survey in Alberta, 73% of the residents indicated that they experienced disruptive behavior. 25% of them said it came from their own residents. So it's interesting to know that there is no boundary where this actually stops. The commoners are usually yelling, shaming, and condescending tones and attitudes at work, which creates a very unsafe environment. Just to give you again an overt example, so this is a 50-year-old surgical specialist. I'm not picking on anyone. I'm just going to the literature and creating a very kind of practical case. This is a very patient-focused surgeon, very good and excellent, 25 years history with the region. Following a disruptive behavior educational session by the physicians program in the department, nurses and colleagues started putting out reports about incidents that were occurring. Many had occurred before them, but they did not know what to do about it. There was a system in place. And essentially the incidents were just a flood of them. And so he had to be sent for an assessment for what was going on. And in the assessment, it turned out that he had wanted to be the head of the department, but an external candidate was brought in, so that was quite stressful. He openly criticized people when they did something wrong, sometimes pushing up a resident to get to doing the procedure himself. And in the assessment, it turned out that he had a special needs son that was going through very significant, difficult challenges of health at the time. Some of the comments he would make, for example, in a ward round after an on-call, irritatingly saying he worked with this resident who killed my patient. And he would actually use racial epithets in the place of work. He talks about a 44-year-old resident as being too old for residency. Talked to a nurse who wasn't meeting up to his speed to say that if you want to be the surgeon, you better go to medical school, but knowing how dumb you are, you're not going to succeed. When she walks out in a disruptive way, in a disturbed way, he goes around to berate her in a sexually degrading manner. A cleaner who didn't clean his office well, he called her, "You too fat to clean my office, can you go down under the table and do that?" And of course, when he gets a call from his resident, he asks them, "Are you on surgery rotation or are you on probation? Why are you calling me for this time?" Now, this is slightly blown overboard to make the point that there are certain behaviors that occur. There are cases that I've seen, and we work with certain physicians, not as much as this, but this is to make the overt case of some of the behaviors that may have been tolerated many years ago, but now with the knowledge that we have, disrupts the environment, and we need to try and bring it back so that the environment is conducive. Now, in the assessment, some of these responses are very, very telling, and it's important for us to know. So when the nursing staff walks away and says, "I'm not going to work with him," his response is that she's not fit to work here since she can't contribute to patient care. And when the nursing supervisor encourages him to tone down his behavior so that morale can improve, he replies that, "Stop targeting me when I'm doing my work," because some of them actually are doing it because of the advocacy role that they want for patients. And when the chief of surgery, who is new, tells him, "Listen, we're friends, but we really have to take care of staff concern," his response is that you're just a pawn for the hospital. So you can see how it begins to kind of justify some of the things to do. And when the administrators are setting a panel to discuss the disruption, the responses are typical. You don't care about patient care, patient matters, you only care about fiscal matters. So these are overt ones that we know, but we have to recognize that there are subtle disruptive behaviors that we experience, being perpetually late, refusing to collaborate with colleagues, or failure to respond to calls, or people like me who don't answer their emails on time. This could create some problems sometimes. This is probably the biggest study that has been done to evaluate the impact and the experience of disruptive physician behavior in the workplace. This was separated, so there's data on 944 physicians. It was in the US. Many hospitals that were called in to respond was a 25-item questionnaire sent in and collected over 6 years. So we have quite a large number of people that responded. And some of the information coming out of it, I think, is in relevance. So they asked the respondents, describe how many times you have experienced this type of behaviors in the workplace. And as you can see, over 50% of them talked about insults that they've experienced, condescending behavior, abusive language, yelling and raising their voice, being berated in front of peers, and disrespect. When the authors asked in terms of the experience and witnessing of the disruptive behaviors, they categorized them into the administrators that I mentioned also participated, nurses who observed and reported, physicians, and then the total number. So as you can see, 75% of those working in the environment observe disruptive behaviors. Not only on physicians, there's a number for physicians. And now, for the number of physicians, 75, while for the nurses was actually 68. So that's quite a large number of people going through this frequently. And when they asked them, how often does this happen? And actually the largest number was 1 to 2 times a week. And that, you would agree that it's probably not conducive for the environment. Now this is a little bit busy, but just want to indicate that in terms of the outcome of disruptive behavior, there are many that we know of that affect the colleagues, but also affect the patient. So among some of the ones here are the fact that many of those who reported observing disruptive behavior suggested that it actually affected patient care by causing errors, side effects of treatment, and patient safety. But what is more important is that they actually connected it with patient mortality. And that probably goes back to the Institute of Medicine to air its human article back in 2001 when they realized that some of the causes of the errors that we were getting actually had to do with the communication difficulties and the disruptive behavior. So that's huge, and we need to do something about it. And lastly, just to mention how individuals were affected. As you can see off the chart, 80 to 90% of those who experienced disruptive behaviors were stressed, frustrated, they felt they couldn't concentrate well, the collaboration of the team was hampered, there was reduced information transfer, and then the communication was a problem. As well, the relationship between the nurses and the doctors was impaired. So quite significant negative outcome to disruptive behaviors, at least from this survey. And I think generally most people who have written about it recognize that it's not just in this survey, it's something that we know does occur in reality. One of the non-personal effects, which should interest at least administrators, is the role that disruptive behavior does to the turnover of staff. Not only the turnover, but the intention to change jobs, to the point where 33% of nurses indicated that they knew someone who changed their job because of disruptive behavior. So this is quite a problem that is high. The other consequences include the desire to avoid that toxic work environment by just being absent from work, or losing your commitment to the organization. Those are all problems that can happen. And we know how creativity and innovation can be tampered down if individuals are experiencing absenteeism and they lose their focus on their work. Just to add also that there's quite a number of people who have indicated that, and I've mentioned the 25% who really believe that some of the mortality that occurred in their patient had to do with the inability to express concern about the patient, the fear that they would face retaliation, and some of the general toxic environment that was created. Many studies have pointed out some of the practical influences of disruptive behavior that turns out into psychological damage. I personally was influenced into this environment because of some of the challenges that we've seen in many of the residents that have suffered because of this. Why does this happen? You will find that an autonomous, high-performing, high-achieving person is needed for the medical profession, but sometimes they can lack empathy and become uncaring. Or somebody who is high efficient and achieving could become domineering, intimidating, or demeaning in behavior, as well as being perfectionistic would lead you to actually be self-centered and raise high expectations for others. Competitiveness is needed in medicine, but that can create other problems as well. So many of the contributory factors I've talked about are valued from a trait perspective in medicine, but also can become problematic. Some disruptive physicians climb on the horse of advocacy, which is valuable, but also is a problem sometimes. And interestingly, some health regions suffer with the fact that they can't do anything about these individuals because they are indispensable. They are the only ones that we have. But just to remind those administrators that there are many indispensables in the grade. Just turn into different categories so that I can tell you in terms of what happens in managing it. There are all kinds of things that happen in the work environment that is quite disruptive. We also have, the passive aggression, retaliation, when you actually say that this is somebody who is disruptive. Then silent treatment. I like this because people can seem cordial in the picture, but really what is in their mind is different. So what do we do about it? Quickly, in maybe 2 minutes. There's a lot that we can do pre-medicine. And actually, there's a very good study that looked at emotional intelligence before students entered medicine. And 3 years later, those who are very good in self-regulation were extremely good in effective communication and interactions, sensitivities in the interactions. So we need to have people who have good emotional intelligence. We need to be able to get people to commit to, really following the principles of civility and professionalism. We need to exemplify it ourselves and also change the culture of the environment. For those who are thinking, well, we don't want to do that, I'm sorry, I think the train has left the station. We have to have a system that allows and protects those who bring cases through. We also have to change our attitudes from applauding those kind of behaviors, accepting them, even tolerating them. We need to be able to come forward and actually say, these are problems for us. This is a model I think I would leave for all of us. We have things that all of us can do. There are things pre-medicine, at the beginning of medicine. The leaders need to codify those behaviors so that everybody knows what is expected. We need to hire for fit. We need to be able to allow people to express themselves without fear. And if you are a seasoned practitioner, please ensure that the culture changes, mentor people and show them what professionalism looks like, and strengthen resilience. That's very important. And as I mentioned, training emotional intelligence. There's evidence that that will work. Something for all of us to do is the fact that we cannot tolerate it. There are various ways that we can engage people to resolve conflict, and also to be aware that those behaviors are not to be tolerated but to be corrected. More importantly, I want to give a shout out for the Physician Health Program. Recognize 50 to 70% of disruptive behavior is because of a mental health issue or mental condition or ongoing stress. So it's important for all of us to be open to getting help. If an assessment is done, people are more likely to access help better. Management is multifactorial, and of course it's important to know, as I mentioned, emotional intelligence, where you can definitely be aware of your own emotions and to allow people to express themselves more. There are many advantages to that. Be the person that will encourage team members, be punctual at your appointment, validate input of other team members, acknowledge others' opinion, and recognize and appreciate differences in the place of work. And I can tell you it works, because there are many people who will be surprised to know that you can turn someone who may appear uncivil to be calm and to actually be rewarded for their civility. Thank you very much. I think I have some time for questions. Okay.
I was on a committee that was looking for a head of a department. And I think that sometimes what happens is the whole way a department within a hospital would work is determined by who's at the head. And so in industry, they do personality assessments. It's just a standard thing, so that they get the right person in the right position. And when I asked the dean at the time, are we doing these types of things, personality inventories, so that we are sure to get the leaders that we need? And they don't do that. I think that part of it is, people are not adequately prepared to deal with the demands of a particular situation, and it could be avoided if we change the way we do things.
I have to agree with you that really the head sets the tone of what happens in the department. The leadership is important. The whole literature around disruptive behavior is that we need top-line management and leadership that really kind of exemplifies what should happen in their own behavior, but also ensures that that reporting system is followed through. In the Physician Health Program, for example, we see situations whereby a resident or a student brings up a concern, and that resident is targeted, but nobody is there to support them, either from leadership, because as you're right, that's not something that was accepted. I think my response would be, one is that we're a little bit late in the medical field in catching up with industry in that context, but it's coming. I'm involved in a project that is looking at the later and not the top end, how medical students are chosen into the medical school. It's a controversial area, but essentially, for example, the study I gave you where your high emotional intelligence allows you to be a better bedside manager, bedside manners is better, you need to be able to enforce that. And similarly, I think head of departments would set the tone of the department, need to be examples of people who can manage their emotions, be aware of other people's emotions, and respond appropriately. So I agree with you. Thank you. Yes?
Dr. Mela, could you give us some examples of practicing disarming statements? That was in one of the slides.
Yes, thank you. So disarming statement helps in terms of calming a situation. So I'll give you a practical example actually. So this presenter was talking about ADHD in a meeting where there were family members involved in that and patient. And the presenter talked about the fact that when a patient is not improving, I reduce the dose of the medication and introduce another medication, and I've seen amazing results among my patients. Somebody in the community who in the audience who in my opinion will probably, one incident is not enough, but will probably have some disruptive tendencies, blotted out the response that I don't do that. I just crank up the dose. The problem with all of you guys is that you don't really increase your medications enough. So that would be my mind, a statement that can foster conflict. The presenter very, very gently and very nicely indicated, well, thank you for making us see that there are actually two ways to this. So ramping up the dose works and reducing the dose works. So that would be an example of a statement. Most times the disarming statement comes with with a recognition, a validation, and actually a fact. So you have to prepare the person. I recognize what you're saying. I validate what you're saying, that this is what your view is, but this is also what I bring in. So sometimes we say things like, allow me to share my own side of the story. Thank you for sharing this very helpful side of the story. So you're trying to see that the views are not washed down, but you're helping to disarm the situation. And if you do more of this, I can see how the environment can actually be much better. But I saw a hand somewhere, but no. Okay, well, oh, there's one there.
Thank you for your talk. I'm sorry you had to rush through the slides that were telling us what we're going to do about this. So that's what my question is. So you have someone that is constantly causing disruptive behavior, sometimes quite severe, and you go through the process, through the bylaws, and comes down to, you have to send him away for a course put on by the CMPA, and he comes back and it's the same problem, that's the way he is, in a way. He's got kind of a personality disorder, I would say. There's people we have, as you mentioned, in the workplace. So what do we do about this? And sometimes they are people that are, they are the only, I'm going to say cardiac surgeon, but it wasn't a